record on this computer. Okay, good morning. May 13th, Thursday. So we'll be wrapping up SQL, not entirely, but for the most part, and reviewing Python today. All right, so a feature of Workbench that I made myself go out and Google. Let me connect to our server. It was bugging me that I didn't have an accurate ERD um, for this Northwind database that is more complete and closer to the actual Microsoft version, and it was extracted from Microsoft and converted to MySQL some number of years ago. Beg your pardon. Um, and I didn't have an ERD for it, and I thought, there's got to be a way to do that. Let me Google it. So sure enough, you can, if you get access to a database and you want to see the entity relationship diagram, so you can see the tables and the column names, and maybe print it out and have it with you in Workbench. And most tools have some sort of function like this. In Workbench, you click on database reverse engineer, and reverse engineering is just pulling something apart and looking at the guts and how it's made, and that's what they decided to call this. So it creates kind of the model, not just the entity relationship diagram, but it goes into an existing database and creates a database model. So let me walk through that real quick. Am I screen sharing? I am, aren't I? Can you see my whole screen? Thanks, Thomas. So you click on reverse engineer and you choose your connection. My connect is my meaningful name. It connects to the database. You see it giving you check marks that, yep, I connected to the database. I retrieved all of your schemas. And I checked for any weirdness in configuration issues. And then you say next. And then remember, a collection of tables is a schema, a collection of related tables. So I wanted to do the Northwind database so that I would have that, but I've already done that. So let me do Northwoods, because all I have is that grainy PDF that I got from my buddy Jim Downey at UCA. So let me click on the Northwoods, which is our little community college with all the students and faculty and enrollment. So then we click on Northwoods and we click next, and it's going through the database, looking at all of the table names and column names and what data type they are and what tables reference, a column that is a primary key in another table, which, so there looks at all the primary keys and foreign keys, and you tell it what you're going to import. 7 total tables, 7 objects. You can create a thing called a view that is like a table, but it's a phantom table created from other tables. So that's what it means by objects. So yes, we want to import all that. We want to execute and place imported objects on a diagram. I'm just taking the defaults here. This did this in seconds. And I say execute, reverse engineering it, placing objects on a diagram. Yay! And we say next. And it gives us a quick summary. 7 tables from schema Northwoods, finish. So now we have a fresh, accurate ERD that we can use, that has all of our column names and their data type, and our relationships, one and only one. A student can be enrolled in one, enrollment will refer to one and only one student, but a student can be enrolled in in many classes. I'm not really sure what that look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Can you see it flashing from gray to yellow? That's pretty cool. It's showing you, it's highlighting the primary key and foreign key relationship, which field it is, when you just hover over it. That's pretty cool. So it's kind of like an interactive. Oh, and um, yeah, pretty cool. I want to say, look at that. Yeah, if you click on a table, it highlights all the tables that are. So this is even better than a PDF. This is actually interactive. Sorry, guys. I just uh, figured out how to do this this morning about 4:30, so I didn't have a chance to play with it. But anyway, that gives you a, a model of your database you can use, your ERD, nice and fresh, and then you can export it. Um, you can export as a single page PDF, which is what I did with my um, the one I generated for Northwind. So that's pretty cool. And when you go to um, when you go to here, this is what I was telling you. It's a database model. It's more than just an ER diagram, um, or if it's a super complicated database, you could do more than one diagram and add different tables. Maybe do like a subsection kind of thing. So there's other stuff here, and you can save this model as a MySQL Workbench file so that it'll come up automatically. I don't want to save that. I can always rerun it. Okay. So yeah, interesting thing you can do with MySQL Workbench. So if assuming you're running SQL, I know a couple of you are having trouble with it. If you're running it, it's uh, cool to run through that process of reverse engineering the database. And I found it on Google. So if you need those steps, then it's well documented out there on the internet. Okay, so you have a file in the classroom. Let me see here. There was something else I wanted to cover. Oh yeah, um, SQL. We have been just looking at the query language, structured query language. So we've been looking at it um, in its generic role as a data manipulation language. But I just wanted you guys to see a quick example of, let's see, where am I? Of data definition language. Inside of Workbench, at the same place that you're typing select star from faculty, you can modify the structure of a table. You can drop a table. In fact, I don't know if you noticed it or not, I had a location table in the Northwind schema that was not connected to anything. And when I ran that ERD, I started looking at it and I thought, well, that's not connected to anything. So I dropped it. There's a command, drop table location. Will delete a table out of a schema. Let me see here. OneDrive, documents, ECDS, printership. Um, I want you to see this text file. This is the script, and in Workbench or in any SQL development environment, you can open a script file, open a SQL script, and it'll all come up into your workspace. So these are the commands that created the Northwoods database. Actually, this is the Oracle format. I had to go in and do a little bit of tweaking around, but it's the same SQL format. So drop table deletes a table, and that's a good thing to do at the beginning of if you're going to create like a master script to create a database. It's always good to put a drop the table in there. If it doesn't exist, it'll error and keep on going. But if you don't, and you go to create a table, it'll also error. So you just see that a lot in these scripts. The drop table just deletes a table. A drop is the keyword. Create table, and then yeah, like I said, here's the for our Northwoods, our location table. Let me pop over there real quick and remind everybody these are our Northwoods tables that were created by create table, and then you give it a table name, column name, data type, column name, data type, column name, data type, and then inside of your create statement, kind of like inside of a select where you've got all of this, where and order by and limit and all of that and group by. There are keywords that you can use inside of your table create when you're defining your database, um, like defining a primary key or I'm sorry, a foreign key, location, loc ID, primary key, uh, um, is um, is the primary key. I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself here. Yeah, you can define foreign keys. There you go. I have to look at what that is. Constraint location loc ID primary key. Primary key is loc ID. I'd have to look at where that is. That may have been something I had to delete. Let's look at the location table. Yeah, I'd have to look at what that is. Anyway, you can define the primary key. You can inflict on the database these relationships so that when you do draw a diagram or whatever, the foreign key primary key relationship is known to the database. Um, um, so like when you're doing all your joins and all that stuff, it makes sense. And you can put a constraint that like a check, it's called check, um, to make sure that a value is correct, like between like 10 and 30 or whatever. And if you try to insert um, a value into the database that violates that constraint, it 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 will kick out an automated error message. So when you're working in programs, whether it's in SQL or in Python or in anything else, a web page, if you violate a constraint on the database, you can trap that error and use it to say, sorry, that's the wrong value or whatever. And the database management system, so it allows MySQL to manage the data, and enforce correctness at the database level as opposed to doing all kinds of if then else programming um, in the web page or the Python program or whatever it is you're doing. So anyway, yeah, data definition language, and then these are insert into table values, and then you provide a list of values, one for each column. And that's how you bulk load data into the database using an insert statement. You can also upload like CSV files and stuff like that. But this is the SQL syntax for jamming data into a database. So yeah, so it's not just SQL isn't just about select statements. That's all the only point I wanted to make. There's also user permissions. You can grant permissions to a table, to a user, things like that. So it's a full-scale database management language. It's not just a query language, although as an analyst, that's generally what you're using it for. Okay. Any questions on that? Blindingly obvious, right? Everybody already knew that. Okay, so let's hop over to the classroom. See what we got here. I wanted to finish up one PowerPoint, one more. In your classroom, it's under the Relational Databases module, under SQL Overview. It's called MySQL Additional Techniques. There were just some things that we hadn't covered that I needed to, or felt like I wanted to cover, that may be useful before we kind of close the book on SQL, or at least for now. So let me bring that up. Additional cool functionality. May 13th. So one of the things that I had said when we first started looking at SQL, and I'm sure that you have seen now, is that it sort of automatically loops, right? Everything it does, it wants to do kind of on every row. If you're selecting the first three characters of something, it does it for every row. You don't have to tell it to loop. And there's also any sort of conditions that you're putting on it are like kind of English language, like conditions you put on, search conditions you put on in the where clause, where age is greater than 18, or in the having clause where you're modifying that group by information. So there's no real if, elif, else kind of logic in what we've covered so far, but you can put that in SQL, and I wanted to go over the case statement, the SQL case statement, which is kind of like an if, elif, else in Python. It goes through conditions and returns a value when the first condition is met. So it just like if, elif, else, it the order, it matters, because as soon as it finds one, it's gonna ignore the rest. Once a condition is true, it will stop reading and return the result. If no conditions are true, it returns the value in the else clause. And if there's no else, if none of it is true, it returns a null value, because kind of like if there was nothing in the database, that from your search result, it would return a null. Same thing as in a case statement. But we can take a look at that. Let's see. Now this is the Northwind example, I want to say, in MySQL Workbench. So what we're doing here is we're selecting three fields, first and last name can put together, and we're calling that name. And then we're selecting the company and the job title. And then the next thing we're selecting, see the comma after job title? The next thing we're selecting, all of this in between case and end as, is a column that we are deriving based on the conditions that we put in the case statement. So I went through our Northwind database, and I found Where are we at here? From customers. Let's see. Let me go over to SQL Workbench. No, 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 no. That was just something else I was playing with. That gets you the first 10 characters of product name. Substring. So I wanted to know the unique values in the job title. That's what it was. Job underscore title. From customers? Customers. And make sure our active schema is bolded. North wind. Yes, that will not error. So we got these 6 unique job titles in our customers. So I thought that would be a good example of deriving something based on uh, another column. So that's what we're doing here. We're selecting those things, these 3 fields, and then we say case when job title equals owner, then and I'm assigning the value a string literal, then priority. I decided that's what I wanted. I wanted a string that's going to be printed out as an additional column. And when the first 10 characters are purchasing, then I'm assigning the value urgent. Else, I'm assigning the value routine. Now, notice it's not the syntax of the case statement. I'm not assigning something to be equal priority or something to be equal purchasing then urgent until the very end, where I'm ending as service level. End as service level. This service underscore level right here is the name of the derived column that I'm creating on the fly. So let me cut and paste that and see how badly it butchers it up in my SQL Workbench. And then I did a more complex one. I think I saved it. Whoop, that's not the one. Did I not? Whoop. What happened? Control Z. Okay, Control C. Control V. There we go. Okay, let's see what it goofed up. Okay, the quotes for sure. Okay, that looks good. And I like things lined up, so whoop. Okay, so you can see here it's a little clearer in Workbench than it is in PowerPoint. So I'm creating this aliased field name by concatenating. You guys know how to do that. The company and the job title, and then comma. That's important to remember. I left that off and took me a minute to troubleshoot what I'd done wrong. So what we're doing is creating another column. See, that's what that comma, you would expect there to be another column in the select statement. But the column we're creating is the result of this case statement, and that will be called service level. So we've got some logic in here. You could store this. I say this in the PowerPoint. You could store this in the database, but what if it changes? You'd be goofing around with your entire database, as opposed to, as an analyst, you're deriving a column that you're going to be loading into a CSV or something, right? So you have control when you're writing this SQL script over that business logic. And this is just an example I just thought up out of my head. Okay, so we run this. Whoop, and we get for the owners, you see where owner, so all the owners here say priority. If they are a purchasing something, a purchasing manager, a purchasing representative, I didn't care. I made that up. If they're a purchasing anything, then we call them service level urgent. Otherwise, if they are anything else, it's assigned routine. And I want to say, yeah, accounting people. Yeah, I assign. They're the only other job title that doesn't match there. So that see this service underscore level is the end as case. So you can that's you're deriving a column based on kind of like if then else logic in Python. So I wanted to make sure you guys saw how that works. I think I got another example. Yes. In our previous example, service level could be stored as a database column. However, it gives you the power to come up with derived stuff in SQL before it ever gets to Python or Excel or whatever you're using, and it doesn't have to be a string. Like here, I've got another example, um, and this was in the W3 schools. So I'll take that and run that over there because some of you don't have Workbench. So if we go to coding stuff, SQL tutorials, W3 schools, MySQL tutorial, and click on try it yourself. I'm pasting this in from the PowerPoint, and I think everything looks okay except a little bit of indentation weirdness. Number of orders, yeah, here you go. Um, um, I did a subquery to get the count of the number of orders that these folks have on order. So you can, inside of the case statement, I wanted to show you, you can do simple, if a column is greater than something, you can do something really simple like that, but you can do something inside of a case statement that's more complex, like a subquery. So I selected the count of the orders primary key, orders ID, um, the count of them where it's greater than two. I'm assigning more than two to num orders, otherwise two or less. And when I run this, arg, I've got an error in my syntax. Concat of that. I gotta fix it, guys. Ah, a bad quote. Try it again. That's not true. Come on, customer. Capital. I must have done that. I might have done that one in Workbench. I might have done that in Workbench. Hang on just a sec. I apologize, guys. Get a new tab. What do we got here that's not liking a quote again, as always? There we go. So it went out and counted the number of orders in the case statement. So and you can make that as complex or as simple as you want. But that case statement is pretty powerful if you need to do some sort of, if then else kind of logic. And switch to W3 schools for another example. That's what it was. So here, if you go to your MySQL tutorial, here you go. MySQL case, for those of you that don't have Workbench up and running, if you click on that, here is the tutorial, and when you click on the try it yourself, it automatically brings this code up in the SQL editor. I wanted to show you that you don't have to do a string. Let's see here. You don't have to do a string. You can say a numeric literal code or anything. Else we'll make it 700. So there's nothing forcing the data type of this derived thing that you wrote. You can make it anything you want. I'm pretty sure it defaults to a string, but the thought just occurred to me. But you can assign a numeric literal. You don't have to have it in quotes. So it is a numeric literal. It's not a string. So anyway, if you look at check out the MySQL case statement thing here, it gives you several other examples. I love this website if you haven't already learned that. Okay, so that's a case statement. Very, very powerful way to do conditional logic within a select statement. Okay, and then there's another thing you might have noticed out there called a union. That's really just combining the results of two very, very similar select statements. And the rules to keep it from erroring, you can't union two select statements unless they have the same number of columns, the data types are compatible, and those columns with their data types have to be in the same order, which it can be a way to combine similar things like I use the example of our faculty and student. And by default, notice the note down there. By default, it does a distinct. It throws a distinct on there. So let me put this in SQL Workbench. And it'll give you the last name, which is a similar data type, a string, from those two tables. Oh, and of course, I got an error. Northwind faculty does not exist. Yes, it does. What am I doing wrong? Northwind. Gotta double click on the right schema. Man, gotta love computers. They just do not fool around. There we go. Once we get the correct schema selected, then our faculty table is recognized. So yeah, all that does is get grab the data and list it, list each unique occurrence of that field. One thing that's making me wonder now, it's F_last, which that's not really true. So I wonder if I put an alias here and I call it all names What's that going to do to me? Doesn't like it. I'll have to look at the union statement. There may be a way to alias the columns in a union because they can be different names in those two tables. But I didn't go into that much depth. Okay, another, got 5 more minutes for break time. 2 more cool things, and then we'll go on break. Sometimes you want to see if a subquery returns anything. If you're just checking to see if, it's almost like um, a binary check on an if statement. And we'll do the example at our W3 schools if exists operator, the SQL exists operator. So you can click on that. So the example we're using is um, uh, we're using a subquery kind of like a case, but this one is just a true or false, exists or doesn't exist case. So we would pull that out where supply and price is less than 20. So we'll run that, and now we get the suppliers where they have uh, a product ID where the price is less than 20. So I'm curious if we modify this to just execute the subquery, what we get. Oh, it's got to join. Yeah, never mind. Never mind. Going off script. Sorry, guys. I get distracted. There's just so much cool stuff to play with. But that's what exist is. It's a way in a in a in a where clause uh, to check and see if the results of a query is it returns a record or not, if it's true or not. Um, you're not returning the number of rows. You're just checking to see if you got a response or not. And then at the end of the day, yesterday, I blew the syntax of your limit clause. Sometimes you're working in a pretty good sized database, and um, you're writing queries and you're not sure of the syntax, and there's ways to do joins and stuff where it returns a whole bunch of rows, and this is the limit is a way in your SQL statement to limit the number of rows. Like there's in my 3 schools, there's a couple. I want to say there's a couple thousand order details. Yeah. So if we select star from order details, don't forget the word, and run SQL. Select star from order. There we go. 2,155 records. So we would really, benefit from limit 20, and then we could see there's only 20 records returned. So that's your limit clause. And where that comes in pretty handy is in a situation like let's say products has quite a few products. Where you want to just get the top something, you know what I mean? Let's start from. It's capital. Man, you got to pay attention. Come on, Walker, pay attention. So from, good grief. Say we wanted to uh, order by price. So now we got um, say descending. Now we have our list of all of our products sorted by price in descending order. So it would be handy maybe if you just want to know um, your three most expensive or five most expensive or whatever. Um, that lets you um, put a limit on the number of rows, and that can be handy if you're pulling data out to analyze, and you've got significant data and insignificant data, and you want to come up with some kind of cutoff point where you're only going to look at stuff that's of a certain value. You don't want to export all of that into a CSV and then have to hack it up with Excel or whatever. So you can go ahead and limit things, or limit the number of rows right there with your limit clause.
So does that limit kind of default to the first grouping of, your number?
Yeah, it will return the query characteristic. You know what I mean? It will answer the query specifics in whatever order they would come out. If by default it brings you back all the rows. This one it defaults to the first. So if we don't order them, it will pull that kind of that random where you can't really count on things in the database. You know what I mean? You don't know what order they're going to come out.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that yeah the limit clause just returns the number of rows returned. It limits the number of rows returned, but it does not in any way affect how the database operates or how the select statement operates.
So is it kind of the same as doing like a select top 20 or select top 5?
Yeah, but I don't know that MySQL does the top syntax.
Mm,
There's a couple of different ways to do it in different databases. I don't know that MySQL does the top operator.
yeah, okay.
But that's another that's a great point, Thomas. That there are just slight deviations in all of these. But once you figure out what you're doing and what you want to do, you just go Google the syntax for your database, and it's pretty clear out there. Yeah, but from what Thomas was talking about, like I think it's in Oracle, you could say select top three, uh, and then your select statement. But anyway, yeah, in MySQL we use limit. Okay, so break time. Um, um, this slide deck is on the classroom. If you want to goof around with those queries. Otherwise, pull up Jupyter Notebook, and I'm going to go back and um, do a review of where we've come from to get it fresh in your head, and then I'm going to let you guys get to work on a lab for Python because I haven't really assigned any hands-on Python. Okay, so see you. It's 9:18. See you back at 9:30. Okay, everybody back? Hey Chase, are you back online?
Yes.
Did you find the PPT?
Uh, I'll look again, but
Let me I'll bring it
I
up.
didn't. I didn't see it when I looked this first time.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Takes a second. Down, down, down to relational databases
Mhm.
module. Under SQL overview, what I was looking at was this MySQL additional techniques.
I swear I didn't see that, but I'll check again.
You know, I miss things all the time. I look for things so fast. It, a lot of times it'll freak me out because I'm like, what? I I saved that or I did that or and I'm just looking around too fast.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. Yeah, MySQL additional techniques. Now the other mistake I can make, but it looks like I didn't do it this time, is I can forget to publish a an item I put in the classroom. But this one should be. I'll wait till you confirm that you can see it.
Yep, I got it. Yep,
Okay,
it's right there.
there you
I'm
go.
sorry.
That's all right, man. It's not like they're in. I guess they're in chronological order. This is the order that I presented them in class
Yeah.
over our 4 days of, or 3 days and a little bit of SQL. Um, but we'll come back to it. I want to make sure you guys can see. It's called T SQL. I think in Microsoft, it's called PL SQL in Oracle, and I think they're called stored procedures in MySQL. But there are absolutely procedural if then else do while, Python looking um, things you can do, but it's not inside of a SQL statement. It's not between the select and the semicolon. They are but you can extend a database to have your own procedures and functions. They're called stored procedures. A lot of web pages depend heavily on calling a stored procedure in the database, and that has the combination of select statements and with all the power that we've learned, and the power of if then else and all that. And you can also do that in Python, and we'll get into that. I can connect to that very same database, and you will too with Python, and query up those results into what looks like a spreadsheet and do stuff with it. So there's many, many, many ways to solve problems. You just got to kind of decide. Okay, so everybody's got Anaconda and Jupyter Notebook up. I did not see an email saying, Don, I can't get Anaconda to run. So I'm going under the assumption that you don't need additional help um, using W3 Schools or some other alternative. So go to my Jupyter Notebook tab, and I want to review, and then I'm going to give you the last couple hours of the day. I developed 10 perplexing Python programming problems um, that are fairly straightforward. They're nothing we haven't covered. But as I go through these, just remember, guys, you can rely on this code. You can cut and paste it and modify it, and I think you've got everything you need to do these 10 problems. But if not, I'll be floating around the house here. Give me a call, and I'll come running back to the computer if you want me to take a look at something with you. Um, I forgot to pause recording during the break. Sorry about that. Hopefully, folks know to just fast forward through the dark screen. Um, so yeah, let's start with input output basics. You'll need to know these. Um, and And actually, all you will need are these are three major types: sequential, decision, and repetition. That's all we're doing. We're not going into anything weird with libraries or odd advanced data types like lists and whatnot. So you'll need to know your print statement. Um, remember your assignment statement is the one equal sign. And then you have normal, good old math, just like you did in SQL and just like you do in Excel. You have the uh, minus, plus, star, slash for divide. Um, so you'll need a little bit of that. We're going to do a little math in your lab today. Um, I'm not doing any real data type weirdness today. Strings in quotes and numeric literals are all you'll have to mess with. I don't think we're doing any exponentiation, but remember that's just star star. If you want to like raise, if you want to cube three, it's three star star three. So remember all of those, and you can. I don't think I'm. You need to convert a type, but you might need to. Remember this int is converts whatever you put inside to an integer. And if you do it in a print statement like this, it just does the conversion just for the print statement, you know. But if you wanted to permanently retype a variable in Python, you could use it inside of an assignment statement where you could say like, you know, age equals int of user input. And that converts user input, the user input variable, to an integer and assigns that to age. So there's int and strs to convert something to string. And then yeah, you can do all the complex math. And remember, you can always use parentheses, just like you did do in algebra, um, to make them more clear, more readable, even if you're not, changing the way the order of operations in a mathematical expression, an arithmetic expression. Uh, if you're not, even if you're not changing the order of operations, you're just doing it for readability. I like parentheses. Makes things seem um, easier to understand to me. So yeah, you've got good examples here of doing some math and printing things out. So you'll need this. Now, I don't think any of the lab uh, force you to have the math library out of the Python standard library. I don't think you'll need that, but um, we will be getting into that the next time we deal with Python. And then remember, there's in your input output, there's these format strings that gives you the power to say how many like decimal points are in a floating point output. I'm not too awfully worried about that, but there's a couple of output statements in your lab today that would be prettier if it included that format statement. So yeah, inside of the print statement, your you can print, remember, as many things as you want separated by a comma, and they can be literals, um, they can be variables, and and they can be a variable that's being sent to a function, or a function operating on a variable. Like this one is the format function, and you're passing root plus and this format string, this string literal, you're passing those two parameters to format. And that whole thing will return the variable root plus formatted according to this print code. And we've got more of those in this I think. And if you need to brush up on it, It's all out there on W3 Schools. To if you want to work on formatting your print statement. I don't generally worry about it, but it comes in handy occasionally. Okay. Yeah. And you can concatenate by using the plus sign as opposed to SQL. Remember, you had to use the concat function. Now we're back to Python where you can use the plus sign. So when you're working with these different languages, it's keeps me on my toes. Seeing if there's anything else particular want to hammer on here. Oh yeah, here's the string str conversion function where we will convert we're we're converting student quantity times donation, which could turn out by default as a floating point. We're converting that to integer, which can do some things if it, like get rid of your truncate anything after the decimal point, and then converting that to string. So, like I said, I want you to be comfortable with the idea of passing parameters to a function, which you've done now in three different tools. But I don't think you need it for the lab. But I'll open that here in a little bit so you can tell. 940. And here's your some formatting commands, and there's a lot of them. So if you'll be printing in Python, you're going to want to practice with those and become more familiar with them. But here's a few for your use for today. Okay. Hang on. Variables can vary. Good old Captain Obvious. You guys would like, well, you're going to like him. And on June 8th, my colleague I keep talking about, Dr. Ellis, will be going, we'll have you pretty much for the whole day, or our normal class session, and go over a library called Pandas, which will really lead us into the data analysis with Python portion of the course. In truth, in earnest. Yeah, we got calculation. Remember, see, so there's no if, no else, no loop, no while, no for, no range function. These are just sequential calculations and print statements. So that you don't read too much into things. So I wanted any questions on that notebook or these concepts. Going once, going twice. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'll close that one out by saying File, close and halt. Gone. And then I wanted to go into decisions and Boolean. You will need if, elif, and else. Remember that anything you're testing, just like the case statement we just did this morning in SQL, resolves to true or false. So you can make that if this and that or this and that, make it as complex as possible, but it will boil down to a true or a false. It's up to you as the programmer to make sure the logic is correct. And these are your comparison operators: less than or equal to, less than. Remember, if you're checking for equality, it's two equal signs, not one. One is the assignment operator. This is the equality conditional operator. And then not equal, bang, equal. That's very common. And then remember, you have multiple, you have, a choice, two choices, or multiple choices. And here we remember our example. So if the income is less than 45,000 is one choice. Otherwise, no matter what else, you're going to do the else bracket. Okay. So that's um, yeah, if and else. And then sometimes you only want to do these underlying lines um, if something is true, but you don't. There is no other out. There is no else. Um, this one is going to check the value of income and do the else if income is anything but less than 45,000. So sometimes you want to check something, but you don't want to do anything else. You just want to do something if a condition is true. So there, you don't have to have an else in your conditional statement. And then remember when there's multiple um, multiple legs, just like in our case statement we did this morning in SQL. If there's multiple conditions, don't forget your semicolon. And convention is to indent. And it doesn't seem to error um, if you miss the blank line, but it's good readability to put a blank after this entire block. It's good. It helps with readability to add a blank line. So this one, it'll check the first condition. Remember, check the first condition. If it's true, it'll do this stuff, uh, and then bomb all the way out to the next line, all the way outside of this entire construct. They check for the first one, and it does the else only if none of these other ones are true. However many conditions you need. And you can remember, and you can nest them. So inside of this if block here, you could have another if, and you just indent it. You indent each level of the nesting structure appropriately, so that you can kind of see, okay, if now I'm in this line, if I have another if or another loop, whoop, now I'm in this, I'm coming off camera. And then so that everything lines up that's being executed at a given level of the logical subset, kind of like indenting an outline, in if you're writing a school paper. So just, yeah, indenting and white space and comments, these are all your friends for readability. And remember, that's our good example of our if and multi elif and else. And even if it's only one line, don't forget the colon to signify that you're inside of this elif. And yeah, nesting. Here we go. So inside of that if, you've got some sequential statements, but then you've got another conditional, and with another colon and another level of indentation. So yeah, these things can get as complex as you like. And yeah, our little menu menu choice, but it only does it once, remember? We had to use the loop in order to repeat until they gave us an exit choice. Because yeah, like here we say please try again, but we don't let them try again unless they run the program again. So that's when we got into looping, which will be the next notebook, remember. Okay, and remember there's and or and multiple ands and ors, and those get surrounded by parentheses, and you just, depending on the problem you're solving and the complexity of the decisional logic, not all programs even get that into it, but some are really hairy. You have to decide on the logic. And or. Uh, Remember, if either of those is true, then this whole thing is true. But this one, both of these conditions have to be true for this to be true. And you can have ands and ors and ors nested, and yeah, it gets ugly. So um, just remember, you are in control of your program, and that's the whole thing, is solving problems. And there is a type of a data type that is Boolean, and we use this keyword to assign a true and false, capital FALSE and capital TRUE. That way, you can just do a test. If you don't have to say if past class equals true, you just say if past class. And that's why the meaningful name, if you would name a Boolean variable something that kind of made sense, knowing that it's only going to be equal to true or false. So you would name it as a kind of like a yes no flag. Okay, and then we did this cloud cover thing, and y'all did great on that. And there was one other construct, basic construct, and that was looping. So we say file, close and halt. Sometimes it doesn't go away and it makes you close the tab. I can't figure out rhyme or reason. And then we got into repetition. Kind of like me. This should be my favorite notebook. I repeat myself all the time. And remember there are two basic loops, right? A while loop and a for loop. While executes while a condition is true, while they didn't enter 0 to quit or whatever, or while there are still more rows in a file, more records in a file that you're reading, or whatever you want, while that condition, then you don't have to say then. Some languages you do. While condition colon, and then it executes all the lines indented underneath the while loop. I want to say, and it's just the thought just occurred to me, you can also do a while not condition, right? Which you can still use not. You can use complex, math while A is greater than B. While A is greater than B, you do, that's your condition. You just got to make sure that inside of your loop you're changing something with that condition, or it'll be an endless loop. And while we're talking about endless loops, sometimes you get stuck. You can hit Control C, or you can hit this stop button up here, and sometimes you just need to just kill that tab and start over again. That'll bring open a new kernel. So yeah, here, like while balance is less than target, less than or equal to target. So you can do a mathematical operator. You can check for a string literal being equal to some value, So that's your while loop. It's gonna go and go and go and go and go. But remember, inside of a while loop, you always have to be doing something to modify what's in your condition, right? Because if you didn't, it's going to get into it, and then it'll never be false. If you're not doing something in your programming to potentially someday make it false, it's always going to be true, and it'll just so that's up to you. You are the programmer. Infinite loop. If it happens to you, and it will, it can be stopped with Control C. And I also like the stop button up here. All right. And then if you want to do something a certain number of times, which you will do in your lab today. You can do it um, for each time there is, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times if you're using a list, but we haven't really talked about lists yet, so um, I don't want to get too much into this one, but it'll print, it'll iterate through this list 5 times, but item will be assigned the value in the list, as opposed to our range function, which is much more traditional. Um, and remember, range, um, if you just do it a number, I want to do something 6 times. Um, um, remember, it returns starting with a 0. So if you want to force that into being a 1, you would make like for 1 to 10, you would say 1 comma 10. So if you wanted to make sure that your looping variable assumed the value 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, you have to tell it, the range function, to start at 1. Otherwise, by default, it will start at 0. Okay. So remember, our syntax for that is real simple. We do this one line of code. You need an iterating variable, and remember, I is super standard in for a lot of programmers. They would say that for I in range 12. Now remember that what that will do. Everything after the colon will execute. There's no check being done. There's no if. It's gonna num will be equal to 0, and then 1, then 2, and up to 11, and then it will stop doing this code here. So if you need to do something 12 times and the number 0 is useful in here, um, um, then do it by the default. But sometimes you want to know the nth time that you've been through the loop. So, you know, not being Python wasn't my first language, so I learned it a different way. I learned for loops defaulting is 1. Actually, you had to tell it. You had to tell Pascal for I equals 1 to 10. You had to tell it the first numeral. It wouldn't assume anything. I think this was an experiment, wasn't it, guys? And I was you don't want to do this. Don't mess with your incrementing variable inside of the for loop. Let Python do it for you. It's bad form, and I'm trying to remember what. Does anybody remember what happened with this one? Start quantity. I don't remember. Does anybody remember what the num15 thing? No. 1980. Doesn't seem to work. Doesn't seem to do anything. So like I said, it's bad form. So this seems to be working. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. Yep. Okay, so that's your for loop. Using a variable for the upper limit value. Oh yeah. You can put a variable in the range. That's all that is, and it could be either number. You could say, where do you want to start, where do you want to end, and put those variables inside of the range function. nothing cosmic about that. And then, oh yeah, this was, if you want to go backwards, remember your third parameter is um, ink, the amount that your incremental amount. And if you say -1, it's going to go down from 10 to 5 by 1. I'm sorry. It's going to do it 5 times. No, from 10 down to 5. But it's exclusive. Yeah, that's what it was. Exclusive of this value. Start at 10, 5 times, incrementing by -1. Let's try -2, see what that does. Ending. Yeah. But it's, remember 2 things about Python that are counterintuitive for me. It starts at 0. A lot of things are 0 based. The 0th occurrence of something, the 0th occurrence of a for loop, the 0th value in a list, and then it does things inclusive and exclusive of the ending value, and the range function is exclusive of 5, so it'll never get to 5. All right, and then inside of a loop, you can have what's called an accumulator, and that's just so that you each time you go through the loop, you add something to something, but you don't lose the value of it. It keeps growing every time you go through the for loop. That's just a problem solving technique. And then I want to say, yeah, the sentinel value. It's always good to initialize variables before you use them in a loop. It's just good practice. But then, this kind of problem, we're entering item cost once, and then based on the user's response, we will do this while loop. So the first time, if they don't enter -999, we'll do this stuff. But don't forget, inside of your loop, you always, whether it's a user input or a calculation or whatever, always put in some sort of logic step that is going to eventually, conceivably, end your while loop. So you don't write an endless loop. And that's what this secondary. It's the same exact line of code as your initial question to the user before you started the loop, but you got to put it in there to make sure that to make sure that item cost actually varies. Okay, and then we had that right triangle, nested for loops. So I went over that last time. That's a pretty good little programming brain teaser. Okay, so those are the 3 notebooks that you need to do a lot of routine logical problem solving. It gets, the problems you're solving can get more complex, but the programming constructs are the same. Now there may be functions like cosine, tangent, some string manipulation things, interacting with the operating system, like doing file handling or getting system time or things like that. There are different libraries that you would need to be familiar with. But as far as just the the basic data types and basic programming constructs, this is all you need to solve a whole bunch of problems. So let me bring that up. Any questions on loops? Is there anything that you've tried and, beg your pardon, had trouble with, never got it to run? Want me to take a look at anything? Share your screen? Is there anybody out there?
The one thing I ended up having trouble with was the concat. That's the only thing that I couldn't get to work.
Was the what, Andra?
Concatenate.
Okay, concatenating strings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just use a plus sign and put them. I like single quotes, but are you still having trouble with it?
Yeah.
Well, you want to share your screen and we'll try and see what we're doing wrong. Let me stop sharing.
I don't have anything to share right now. I just couldn't get it to work.
Well, let me try. I'm still screen sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Print, and we want to concatenate plus another quote. Actually, that's no spaces in what we're in the strings we're concatenating. Plus quote, and it sticks in the extra quote for you. Watch out for that, guys. So there's times when you want one quote, and Notebook, Jupyter Notebook will cram that second one in there for you. That should run, right? Does that look correct?
Think so?
Anybody see a problem with that one?
I think it looks great.
Run. Don is a great teacher with no spaces. Now,
Yeah, I did it. So
cool.
would you have to put a space on each side of the A for that to come out right?
Yeah, either that or I want to say print.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do it that way. Or I want to say print. If you list them, if you don't concatenate them into one string, but you treat them as individual parameters, it seems like it sticks some space in there for you. So all I did was get rid of the plus signs, and so I'm not concatenating anymore. I'm just sending 3 parameters to the print statement. See, it fixes it. It defaults to having a space after your string that you're printing, which is just
little quirk.
It's just a quirk. Yeah, I mean that's just the default behavior, which you kind of might think is cool, and it might be super frustrating. So you just got to know when you can pass them as individual parameters, and when you want to concatenate them. There you go. Anybody else have trouble with any of these basic notebooks or syntax that was messing with you? We can take a look now, or you can give me a buzz and I'll come running. All right, let me save that, and then file, close and hold. And I wanted to, okay, somebody, anybody, everybody, go to programming in Python. Did I thought I put it up here. Hang on a sec. Click on assignments. Does everybody see Python problems number 1?
Yes.
Okay, so click on assignments. I can add it when I put it over in that other area under a module. It's really just a link to these assignments. This is really where all of your individual assignments are listed. So if you were wondering what what I put out there as an assignment and whether something else is due or whatever, this is really the best place to go to is clicking on assignments on the home screen. So yeah, now somebody click on Python problems number 1 and um, confirm for me that you can download this Python exercises number 1. That is a notebook. Download it, put it in your notebook directory, and bring it up in Jupyter Notebook. I'll wait until the first person says, "Yep, works like a champ," but I need to make sure it downloads correctly and functions as a notebook.
I've got it.
Okay, Chase, you got it pulled up in Jupyter Notebook?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what you're looking at, I'll bring it up for homework here for your lab today, and keep working on it. Try and get them all. Try and knock them all out. Let me find it. What you're looking at is a markdown cell and then a code cell. I think I got them all converted to code cells, not markdown cells. So yeah, it's just a brain teaser Python problem for you to work on. You don't need any more input than asking the user for a number or two, storing that in a variable, which we've done. You've got the notebooks for that. Doing a few calculations, printing something out. That's what we're doing in the first 5, or really just, grab a value, do some math, print out an output. Now, even or odd, we're going to need to know the Python mod operator. You need to know. I'm going to let you guys chew on that one. I would Google it. I don't know if there is a is even function, or if you would have to do. You've heard of the modulus operator, right? It divides by a number, and if there is no remainder, if something mod something else is 0, then they are evenly divisible. And that's how you check to see if something is a multiple of something else. Well, I would use the something mod 2 operator here, but there may be one. Google it. How would you check for a number to be odd or even in Python if you don't already know? The other ones, I don't even think they're that tough. And up through 5, you don't need if, or the first 5, you don't need conditional or repetition. No ifs, no elses, no for loops, no whiles for 1 through 5. 6 and 7 are just conditional. You don't need to loop. And then 8, 9, and 10 are looping. Name that shape. So anything, you got to have at least 3 sides to be a geometric shape. If it's 2 sides, it's a line, right? So 3 is a triangle, 4 is a quadrilateral, 5 is a pentagon, and 6 is a hexagon. Pentagon, not a pentagram. Yeah, just 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be enough for this problem. to do your if, elif, else. And then you got a few loops to write. And we just went over those various types of loops. Okay, so those are the problems. If you have any trouble, please give me a buzz on the phone, and I'll walk you through it. Come back to the computer, whatever I got to do, and we'll get through it. Otherwise, any questions on the homework? Till you get into it, probably not. Okay, cool. So everybody's got visibility into that. Click on assignments. It's the assignment Python problems number 1. Other than that, starting next week, we get into data visualization and storytelling, a little bit of theory, a little bit of art to this part, where you start we'll start talking about how the words and the way pictures are presented kind of, they matter. I'll be using Power BI to show you some what do you call it? Not desktop, dashboards. Some desktop concepts. Power BI dashboards, but Tableau does dashboards as well. Seems like Domo does visualization. So I want the Python does visualizations. Excel does charts and whatnot, and PowerPoint. So there's lots of ways to do data visualization. So I don't want to harp on one tool necessarily. But I do want to spend a couple of weeks on the concept of visualizing data over the next 2 weeks, and then remember, no class immediately following Memorial Day, so we won't have any class sessions those first 2, like what is it, June 3rd and 5th, something like that, and then we'll come back, finish up visualization, and start moving into analytics with Python. Starting off with Dr. Ellis talking about the pandas library, which is pandas is a shortcut, super cool, way powerful, easy way to deal with data and make it look like a spreadsheet. So you can start working on rows and columns with really short, elegant syntax that are not too tough to work with. But we got to do these kind of problems and work with a few more data types so that so all the analytics starts to make sense to you guys. Okay. Anything, any questions, concerns, comments, anything before we adjourn to work on this lab before Tuesday morning? Going once. Going twice. I'm sure you're all hoping that I will say going thrice. Come on, that was my best Dr. Evil. Nothing? I get nothing out of you people? Come on.
It was good.
Welcome to my underground data lair. Some of you I know, some of you I'm meeting for the first time. All right, guys. Have a good weekend, and we'll shift gears starting Tuesday morning at 8:30.
Thanks, Don.
We'll see
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Bye, guys.